Wow. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate everyone that is here because I know you're contributing to the Gun Owners Action League, and I've already missed the starting point of my speech. You're going to hear a lot of speakers tonight that are really great and smooth. I aren't one of them particularly. So I come up here with ye old stiff neck from a bad pillow or something, or pull out ye old envelope, which great things are written upon. And what I like to do is build on Cam Edwards' story, because as a student of history, we find a lot of these untold tales to the rest of the world that does not study history. And those that do not study it are, of course, going to repeat it, because man doesn't change. Okay, we are not far from the caves. And back in it was 995, a great man of England, King Alfred the Great, was the first one that codified English common laws of the day onto paper so that they could be passed on to the next generations. And one of his laws was that, back then they built forts to keep the bad guys out, and a lot of people were killed with swords and spears, and life expectancy was short. So that every man, one of the laws was every man had to report for guard duty. And if he happened to be a household happened to be lost in battle, then who was going to take his place? It was the woman. So women have been on guard duty and carrying the burden for a long, long time. And I don't think we get enough appreciation to women sometimes. I see them carrying babies, and I'm saying, man, I'm glad I'm a dude and I don't have to do that. Because women can carry that kid on their hip. That's why they have wide hips, maybe, all day long. And man, after 15 minutes, hey, honey, come here. And so to get back on schedule, thank you for that the best welcome a person can have in America is a patriot's welcome like you just gave me. Thank you very much. And what I like to say is, a lot of guys can probably identify with this. I get this wonderful welcome, and how many guys have a wife that says, why do you call him a rock star? He's just my messy husband. Women, do you have to put up with that? So, speaking of rock stars, I would like to know if Carissa and Caleb Eau Claire know just how powerful a rock star your mother is. And I hope you appreciate her. Of course, David knows that because he's in the wake all the time, I'm sure. So for me, to be here is an honor, and this is the first time I attended the Lexington Concord reenactment. And we were up at 3:30 on the battlefield at 4:25, and we were still 20 yards away maybe from the action, and couldn't see a thing, not even the top of the spears of the British guns. And speaking of British, no, I'm not a redcoat. This color was picked because it's Thomas Jefferson's favorite waistcoat for his portraits, if you look them up. So I'm in vogue for the day, and my patriot uniform is called Average Citizen Gun Owner. Okay, and that's my new logo, Average Gun Dude, when I change shirts. So for today, my word was, I was thinking of carte diem, and it's seize the day, savor the moment. And we know that our Heavenly Father was what gave the dudes on the green the valor and the persistence and the willpower to fight for freedom. And I know when I get to heaven, I'm going to approach these dudes and say, hey, dude, because we're going to talk our language because they might have modernized by now. I say, hey, dude, do you know what you hath wrought on April the 19th, 1775? What an awesome moment that will be. So I'll start the story. My point of history, reference of history for today is in 1640, there were 6 colonies that declared a man from every household on the way to church on Sunday morning must carry a firearm. I kind of like that. I don't have a problem with that. But if you move forward 400 years to just a couple of years ago, the state of New York's, in the form of the legislature and Kathy Hochul, signed a law that said 400 years after that was just the opposite. Thou shalt not carry a firearm into church or a house of worship. And of course, my Jewish network up in New York made very short shrift of that particular law. Very quietly, Governor Hochul did not want to admit that she had been slammed again. So we go from 1640, my story then goes to 1773 today, and at 1773 was the Tea Party. So today's commemoration fit, I thought, nicely between the Tea Party and the rumor that independence was coming. A lot of talk about that, and maybe that thought kind of motivated them. I'm not a history writer, so I don't know the answer to that. And then if you go from 1776, just 60 years later, there was a very powerful case in 1840 called the State of Tennessee versus just a normal knife dude. His name was Aymet, Aymettee. And I only have one message today, and it relates to George Washington back in that time period where he sort of evaluated the arms and said, I'm sure he didn't say gosh, but basically, golly, our citizens' arms are as good as the British military, and if you go down to Kentucky and Tennessee, they might even be somewhat better with rifled barrels and whatnot. So what I'd like to do is, that case is so powerful. How many have heard of the case called Aymet, Aymettee? One? Okay, and we're all gunnies in here, so more people should know about this, and it's seeing the light of day, and let me tell you why. I'll read this. This is from a brief. Now, this case was 1840, Tennessee Supreme Court. This is a brief written for the Supreme Court. It was called Virginia Duncan versus California, in the form of Attorney General Bonita and then later Attorney General Bonta. If you see a current brief, it'll say Virginia Duncan versus Bonta. And it was written by the most fabulous attorney team that I've ever met. They have, short version, they have over 100 briefs written just for the Supreme Court. Boggles the mind if you're me. And it was sponsored by, it had the name on it, Gun Owners of America, which are out there, are your allies, as you know, and the Heller Foundation. And what it said was, in this brief, it said the 1939 Supreme Court, you know what that is? That's the one with the sawed-off machine gun? No, I'm sorry, sawed-off shotgun, right? Okay. It said, the Miller Court, it was USA versus Miller. The Miller Court had no misunderstanding of the purpose of the Second Amendment and cited the 1840 case, Aymet versus Tennessee, which explains the why. And here's the issue, the why. George Washington knew we had comparable firearms in the hands of the citizenry, comparable to the British military. The purpose of the Second Amendment, the why military-grade weapons are critical in the hands of civilians, was A, to protect the public and our laws. And B, here's the word, this is the awesome point, to hold in awe, A-W-E, to hold in awe those who are in power, and to maintain the supremacy of the Constitution. Now you've heard of it. Let me tell you how powerful it was. After the Miller case referenced it once, in that magnificent Justice Scalia magnificent decision about our magnificent Second Amendment in his gun decision, he referenced Aiello 11 times. And I counted, it just seemed outrageous to me, so I counted it many times. I think I got it counted 17 times once, but that might have been the references, so I counted again. I came up with a number, it was somewhere around 11. It might have been 9, it might have been 17, I don't know. To maintain the supremacy of the Constitution. That is there anything else that matters? I mean, if you maintain the supremacy of the Constitution in its purest form, everything else is, why are you bothering me? So, in Scalia, the magnificent decision was, of course, that to keep and bear arms was a constitutional, enumerated individual right to keep and bear arms. And, okay, let's not get lost here, dude. And after that, in there was a phrase that said anything of military use, bearable, portable, is protected by the Second Amendment. Now, I don't want to tell you what I've been working on for a long time, but because it would alert the competition, the anti-gunners, but the initials are MG. And I've talked to a lot of lawyers, okay, some even in this room, I remember. We have in the Massachusetts, the last, I don't know what it's called today. I checked a few days ago, and what I saw was Massachusetts House 4885. And at that time, a couple of days ago, what I saw, I was probably a little old, but it was 116 pages of new gun controls. Now, and they gave it the smarmy name of modernizing firearms laws. So what does that mean? What that means is up your Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is obsolete. The Constitution is obsolete because without the Second Amendment, well, we know the result of that. So whenever I see any law, I ask myself, under what authority? Reminds me of when when Charles I was beheaded, and they handed him the papers, and he said, with his stutter, under whose authority do you hand me this summons? So that's where I learned that phrase. And I ask it all the time. Under what authority? Look it up. Life is simple. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. It is what it is. So I don't mind telling my age, kind of proud of it now because it tests everyone's history knowledge. I was born a mere hours after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, okay? I tell people, I was probably born a little early, fell out on my head. That's why, I'm lacking in many skills. But so in that time, in 1975 was when my gunfight started. I wanted to have one of those, do you know what that is? Matt Dillon gun smoke. Well, I had to have one. So when I got mine in June of 1976, see any relation there? 200 years almost to the day. I tell people there is a gun god. So buying it in July, they said in October, July, August, September, 3 months. They said I had to throw it in the trash or give it to the government so they would own all the guns. And I had a very intelligent, long conversation with myself that said, ain't happening. So just to let you know, I'm still fighting. Our Heller complaint number 20 was submitted to the D.C. Circuit Appellate Court just about 3 or 4 Fridays ago. And so I'm still fighting for you. And I'm glad to turn it over to the young crowd to carry on the work. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope your kids love you.